Hi, Kate Paulin here, your agent with heart. Why do I do what I do? Because I love helping buyers find the perfect property and sellers to sell to profit. In 29 years of selling real estate in this marketplace, I've developed unmatched skill, expertise, team of professionals get the job done right, creating happy clients and great relationships with agents and brokers from across the table. So thank you everybody who joins me for this little informational topic on the market. And in the next few minutes, we're going to spend time going through some updates on prices, some best information on prices that we've gotten recently. We're going to talk about inventory and foreclosures, and really then move into what the Fed's talking about, maybe an upcoming recession and foreclosures. So you really want to have some good knowledge. And so connect with me on a monthly basis and we'll try to get you there. Let's start with Doug Duncan. On a quarterly basis, home prices rose as seasonally adjusted 1% Q1 2023. That's nationally. The fact that prices rose slightly in the first quarter is evidence of significant pent-up mortgage demand despite ongoing affordability constraints. So certainly good news, welcome news here in the first quarter as we're getting information out of that. And I sort of want to put this question on the table right now. Have home value declines stabilized? That's the question that I think this sort of leads us to, and want to go in, look at the facts and look at the information. If we look at the leading indicators that measure month-to-month home prices, I think we can make a case that it's beginning to happen, if not already happened, in home prices. So look at Case-Shiller, FHFA, CoreLogic, and this is a look at month-to-month prices going all the way back to January of last year. And we started the last year, this kind of started with a bang, and then around the middle of the year started to see home prices month over month start to slightly decrease, and a lot of that due to rising mortgage rates and all the things you already know. So fast forward to the latest information here, February, March, we see that to turn, we start to see that turn is happening. Now, we're going to stay on top of that, but I think it's safe to say that as you look at this, some of the worst in-home price declines are behind us. Here in Boulder, the city of Boulder median home price is $2.2 million. And in Boulder County, which goes all the way to Longmont and Lafayette, Louisville, there are $909,000 median price. Yeah, I think it's important for us to remember, because you turn on the news, you hear about, gosh, the worst is not even here yet. We should expect home price declines this year. Not what the facts are showing us, right? So to continue on this theme, Black Knight said just 5 months ago, prices were declining on a seasonally adjusted month-over-month basis in 92% major U.S. markets. Fast forward to March, and the situation has done a literal 180, with prices now rising in 92% of markets in February. That's certainly welcome news for us. Certainly welcome news for homeowners that are wondering what's happening with prices across the country. Last month on the monthly Mark report, I talked about prices. This is sort of an addendum to that, give you the latest information on prices, because here's what's around the corner, I believe. Here's what's coming up. We're going to start to see forecast revisions. We're already seeing this Fannie Mae's change in March. They said we might lose about 4%, a little over 4% in value in homes in the country. Well, fast forward to March, and they've wait, hold on, maybe 1% value loss. I think that will continue, and we'll see a year that'll be flat, if not positive, this year in home price, because a lot of things that we've talked about. There's a lot of information in the last few weeks, foreclosures. So let's cover that. I think one of the reasons we're seeing positive movement in prices because of lack of inventory. And I think that last graph kind of sums it up. Okay, so what are we talking about right now? The months of inventory of homes for sale in this country going all the way back late 90s. And so there's a report that came out middle of April that the title was U.S. foreclosure activities continue to climb to Q1 of this year. So while it's factually correct, I think a lot did mislead people, and headlines start popping up like this. More Americans are going to lose their home to foreclosures. Foreclosures on U.S. properties rise. Jumps 22%. Recession hit a high last 3 years. Foreclosures jump. You see these things in our businesses, outside our business, and while factually correct, oftentimes very misleading. A couple things that are critically important about this is that we have the conversation, we have the facts, and have a relative market opinion based on fact. First piece here, there were over 1 million fewer foreclosures in the last year than the average heading into 2020. So anytime you look at information, we always want to go back to 2017, 18, 19, the last 3 normal years, I would say, in the business, and the average of foreclosures in those 3 years, 598,000, almost 600,000 foreclosures each year. So we don't want to wish foreclosures upon anyone. Of course, that's so hard. Certainly our hearts go out to those that are experiencing it, but it's a fact in our business and it happens. We go through 2020 and COVID, and the moratorium comes up about you literally can't foreclose on people, and those numbers drop through 2020, 21, 22. And as we come out of the moratorium, we should expect foreclosures to rise, but not at the rate that's going to dramatically impact inventory and shoot us up into a buyer's market. Whoever's writing these headlines obviously didn't look at the graphics. This is a look at U.S. properties with foreclosure filings going all the way back to 2025. And if you go and see the rise, 2008, let's see, where was this? Okay, sorry, didn't go to the next slide. Okay, so you can't see my cursor, but during 2008, during the housing crisis, when there were over 9 million foreclosed distressed properties, deed in lieu, and all the things we know in the distress site sale category happened. A lot of people hurt, a lot of people impacted by that. And today we sit right here. Well, you see that little uptick right there. The foreclosure activity by the numbers. If you want to have those numbers handy, 95,712 properties with a filing in the first quarter of the year. And 65,000 started the process in the first quarter. And you see the rest of the numbers there. My job is to be the knowledgeable broker to understand that the headlines do more to terrify than they do to clarify. And that's kind of what's going on. So what's our message in all of this? My message is pretty simple. I think Realtor.com sums it up pretty well. So here we go. There's no reason to panic. No need to panic. Yeah, no reason to panic. So the Fed foreclosure moratorium ended, and the moratorium was enacted in the early days of COVID when millions of Americans lost jobs to prevent a tsunami of homeowners losing their properties. Hey, Ben Franklin, on the $100 bill, the Hundy. The job of forbearance was to give people a way to bridge the gap during COVID. So forbearance, yeah, I mean, just kind of like free money from the government. I think we've covered that extensively. It did its job, pretty good job. And as we kind of come out of this, we should expect more foreclosures than what we've seen last year. But it's a number that would lead to the tsunami, as they call it, homeowners losing property. So being educated, having the facts at our disposal is critically important in this market to really being the expert. So I want to go into our topic on recession. The Fed met and raised the Fed rate here recently, causing more and more questions about recession. Would that come? And I use their words right here from their most recent statement that came out of April, and where they said, we expect a mild recession starting later this year with recovery over the subsequent 2 years. So I'm not here to say a recession is coming, when it would, how long would it last, anything like that. What I'm here to say is the talk of recession is going to heat up and continue to heat up as we go through the year. The economy slowing down, the Fed working to slow the economy down. So what did they actually say? Here's the summary of their March meeting. The summary came out in April, given their assessment of the potential economic effects of the recent banking sector developments. If you don't know what that is, some banks are starting to fail. So looking at that, understanding, knowing that's going to be out there, there are a couple things we want to understand. One, what defines a recession? And two, the question that we should ask is, how would housing be affected? So yeah, let's go back to what a recession actually is. Here's how they define it. But again, the question I want to go back to is, how would housing be affected? How would that affect interest rates, mortgage rates specifically? Are the answers the questions we need to be ready to deliver in a confident way? So yeah, how would housing be impacted? Bankrate sums it up like this, and I think they do a good job with this. They say during a traditional recession, the Fed will usually lower interest rates, and this creates an incentive for people to spend money and stimulate the economy. It also typically leads to more affordable mortgage rates, which leads to more opportunity for home buyers. So there you have it from Bankrate. How does a recession affect housing? Typically leads to lower interest rates, and that creates an incentive for people to spend money, and then leads to more affordable mortgage rates. Difference between, they're talking about interest rates, the Fed funds rate, mortgage rates, what we know to finance a home, what leads to more opportunity. Now we don't want to see a recession come to this country. That certainly is a term for an economic slowdown. It will affect people, but oftentimes, typically in our business, is an incentive in the housing market. As we go through this, the Fed said a mild recession. I think we'll really be able to discuss what the pros and cons of during a recession. Being able to have that conversation with somebody and say, okay, what are the advantages? What are some of the pros and cons to all of that? So here's some of them. A pro, less competition, lower prices, lower rates. So during a recession, the Fed Reserve will often lower interest rates. Well, some might say these are high interest rates. I started in real estate when they were quite a bit higher. Doesn't keep people from buying. 1 percentage point is about $100,000 worth of buying power. So that you want to keep that in mind. The cons, stricter lending requirements, fewer options available, and economic uncertainty. But with the facts at hand that we need to have readily available are what happens with prices. So what happens with interest rates? How does this affect what we do? There's so many things happening out there in the world we can't control. The area that we can't control, that we can be the expert in, is the housing market. So how does it affect prices? Well, the first thing I can say is that a recession doesn't mean falling prices. I've said that for a long time. Recession doesn't mean a housing crisis. We went back and studied, and my team studied the last 6 recessions and found that 4 of the 6 times home prices actually appreciated, twice they depreciated. Once marginally in the early 90s, but what everybody remembers in 2008, when homes lost almost 20% of value, but not too much here in the Boulder area, a lot of people were hurt. Maybe they saw the parents or loved ones get hurt during that time. And it's interesting, some of my buyers who had been renting forever and ever saw their parents and family members get hurt by that. And so it was a little bit of fear to get into the housing market to begin with, but home ownership is amazing. So don't let that scare you if you haven't gotten into getting a home yet. First-time home buyers. So what do we think when we think back to like 2008? And if you go back and look at those 6 same recessions in the country, you see each time we've seen mortgage rates fall, going all the way back to the early 80s, and having that information available can help give people confidence. So what is this? This is the angel oak tree just outside Charleston, South Carolina. Scientists say this tree is probably 300 to 400 years old. I don't know exactly. And the size of it, the canopy, 25 feet, just so beautiful. And I think it's a good thing to remember that that it stood the test of time. I think you could make the case that it's because of its strong root system, because of the strong foundation of the tree. I'm a tree hugger, so this really resonates with me. And here's what I'm going to say. To use that as an analogy, we live in one of the most foundationally strong housing markets of our lifetime, if not the strongest housing market in our lifetime. I'll give you 2 things to sort of back that up, and I'll tell you why I can say it. First, the current rate on existing mortgages, according to FHFA, as of the 4th quarter of last year, the majority of those mortgages below 5%, over 80% of the existing mortgages below 5%, over 50% below 4%. Some loans that aren't going to default, those loans right there, people are going to work as hard as they can to keep that mortgage. They can't go out and rent an apartment for what they have their mortgage payment on. And that's a strong foundation for homeowners across the country. Second reason I can say that right there, Americans are sitting on tremendous equity. 67, almost 68% have either paid off their mortgages or have at least 50% equity. When you break down the numbers, 38.7% of people in this country own their home free and clear. And that's a great opportunity for getting HELOCs in place for purchasing real estate. And I did a education on that last week for my referral group. So if you want to learn about how those can work for you, get into the Smart Flow and learn about it in my presentation. So yeah, that's amazing. 28.9% have at least 50% equity. That term would be called equity rich in housing. So you add those together, you get almost 68% in a position where they are either paid off or they have 50% equity. Extremely strong foundation for homeownership in our country. So that's a silver lining. Don't listen to the headlines. The one thing that reminds me, back in 2008, people walked away from their homes because they literally owed more than their home was worth. And now fast forward with this recent crisis over the last couple of years, COVID and all the things we've dealt with, people have said this: we're going to do things differently. We're going to protect the equity of our homes. We didn't do it right the first time, but we're going to do it right this time. And it's showing up, building an extremely strong foundation for the housing market. Yeah, so the reason I bring that up is when articles come up and they say, okay, foreclosures are on the rise or prices, whatever, my job is to combat the negative headlines with the facts and what's actually happening and reinforce those facts with the confidence that we live in a very strong housing market. And I'm the expert that you can trust. So if you were to ask me, why do I do this? For a couple reasons. I want to keep you educated and confident. And my goal really is you'd have the information you need to be educated and confident in what's happening. I want to provide you with the most current and trusted housing market insights and the truth behind what's happening, the data, the insights backed by the information that I talk about. Ultimately, that you can share this content too with your people. So that's why I exist. And I do it all. I do it so you and I can have a great relationship. And I hope to be the expert to your clients and those of you that I serve. And so you can make the best decisions for you and your families, and your coworkers and people that you trust, because I want to treat them with care and concern. So that's it. Our May update. Kate Pollan, your agent with heart. Call me with questions, and God bless.